PTA family, I'm Patty, your New York State PTA president. Welcome to the very first full episode of our brand new podcast, Bite Size, Insights from New York State PTA. If you caught our intro episode, you know this podcast is about honest conversations, real leadership experiences, and creating space to grow together as PTA leaders and advocates as we continue measuring our mission for every child. We are kicking off strong with a powerful episode called Let's Talk About Inclusion for Real. This conversation will dive into what diversity, equity, and inclusion really means and how our evolving work around inclusion is reshaping the way we lead, support, and show up for all children and families.
And I'm Kyle, Executive Director of New York State PTA, and we're thrilled to launch this first episode with such a critical and important topic and a fantastic group of voices. Today, you'll hear from a dynamic panel of New York State PTA leaders who keep it real, thoughtful, and inspiring. Brenda, our New York State PTA Diversity Coordinator, and our fantastic leadership development team from all around the state, Mary, Kathleen, Robin, and our state treasurer, Sonia. These are leaders with heart, courage, and lived experiences, and they're bringing you an honest conversation that challenges us to look inward while staying rooted in our mission to serve every child with one voice.
We also want to take a moment to thank you, our PTA members and leaders, who support students, families, and educators every day in our schools and communities. And don't forget, New York State PTA has so many exciting initiatives coming up this year. Leadership training opportunities, new DEI and family engagement resources, and events where you can continue growing as a change maker. Be sure to visit nyspta.org and stay connected.
And launching this podcast is just one more way we're staying connected and centering conversations that matter. Remember, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, it's not going to get better. It's not. We have 365 days, 365 opportunities to make a difference this school year in the life of a child. And New York State PTA will be with you for each and every day. Let's get started with our first full episode of Bite Size, Insights from New York State PTA. This is Let's Talk About Inclusion for Real.
This is Bite Size, Insights from New York State PTA. So every time, we have convention or if we have SLC orientation, I always end up having a crazy story to tell. So for convention, I think I forgot all of my undergarments and I forgot my medicine. Thank God, Rob Rehos had not left. His family had not left. They were coming up for convention and they got my medicine for me. And then Bridget from the membership coordinator for WEPR, she took me out to JCPenney and I was able to buy underwear. So now, really. And so, you think, that happened, that'll never happen again. So I was like, so when we were going for orientation, I had been up early in the morning. I'm running. And so I'm looking at my cell phone and Brenda and Mary Sotomayor say, okay, we're here. Mary McNamara, I'm here. And I was like, I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to put my jacket on. And I said, when I get there, usually I'll check in my room and tighten up, put my bra on, put everything on. Cause I'm going to sit in the back. I'm not going to hug anybody. That'll be it. And when we got there, my room, of course, was not ready. So and it was kind of good for me because the room was a little chilly anyway. So I had a reason, and my jacket is a lightweight jacket. But I was like, I cannot believe I am sitting in this orientation. That's the thing. And I had to go make a presentation about SLC. And I was like, look, you do what you got to do. You just do what you got to do.
Thank you. DEI to me is just being accepting of everybody. And in all honesty, I like to call it pretty much mind your own business. And I say that, right, because really that's what it is. We all have our own DEIs, right? We are who we are and we love to be accepted. So we have to accept others as well. So I always think about it from the human perspective and just minding our own business. And, just if we are going to intrude, then be helpful and supportive. But if we're going to not be accepting, then you know what? Keep our mouth shut, right? But what's the saying? If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. kind of sort of thing. So that's, to me, it's really DEI, it's just being inclusive and just accepting of everybody and judge free, not being judging of people.
When I think of DEI, I think of just leveling the platform. And unfortunately, some people automatically think of it as a race thing. And I don't. Because and I have issues in regards to changing the word equity to opportunity. But, when I look at what is the equity? Because that's really what it's all about. Diversity, yes, but I hone in on equity. So if we are in a room and everyone in the room is 6'5", but we want to make it equal, and we have two people in the room and they're 5'5". Well, the equity is the space between the 6'5" and the 5'5". So what is it that we have to do to make it so that the 5'5" is at the same equal height as the 6'5", if they're playing basketball or whatever have you, and it's so I immediately, unfortunately, so many people think of this as a race thing. And I don't think of it as a race thing, because I have been told that when there's a school that's heavily diversified, oh, you don't need DEI. Yes, I do. Because what if everybody in that school is all left-handed? And we have nothing for the right-handed people. That's the equity, making the right-handed people at the same level as as we've made with the left-handed people.
And Robert,
so it's not a black-white thing, I think it's an equity thing. That's me.
And Robert, you're so spot on that, because I think people think of it being perfected, and it's not. And there's always going to be the need for equity, always. Bringing back to one of those stories is the school that my daughter went to was predominantly Hispanic, and somebody made a comment like, "Oh, well, your school is diverse," and I'm like, "No, actually, it's not diverse at all." And that's really when I started opening my eyes. Like, let me look at the smaller pockets within the school community to see how we could attract them. Because I think, like what Robin said, people have this misconception that when you talk about DEI, it's race, and it's not. It encompasses so much.
It really does.
Other people are using the word belonging. And I know my daughter's college, which she graduated from just 2 weeks ago, they, and this is a conversation that I had with the committee, and it's not a matter of, if, it's really of when it's going to happen. And I love that her school jumped right on board when the challenge was put out there. And what they did was to stay within compliance. They just changed the name. But just know, and this is what I stress to everybody, the name might change, but the work has always been it. The work is not going to change. Thank you. I think what sparked my passion was that within the city I lived in, I saw some inequities and some, and it really started with PTA, and I'll be very honest. It's just that I saw that some PTAs were just not being ignored, neglected, but it just was not getting the support that should have been happening. And when I started diving in doing that work, I started really seeing the need to bring this forward where, we have some good pockets that are thriving, but what about those pockets within our city that are not? And again, not to say that people were neglecting them, but it was more like they were lost in this city of ours, or in our school district, to say, narrow it down to that. And I don't know. I just felt like I want to give them a voice. Really, that's what it was. I just want to give them a voice and empower them to fight, and advocate for their children.
I think it's easy to get pigeon-toed into that area by not. I think I congratulate you for not taking that road and just show that you're more than just DEI, because that's where there's, just like when Brenda was saying, your school doesn't need to have any diversity. It's the same thing. And again, it's an innocent comment, and it's an innocent assessment. Oh, you'll be great for DEI. Why? Why would I be great for DEI? Why would I be great? So tell me that. And what was wonderful is you challenged everyone to find someone else to give the voice to the voiceless. And it doesn't have to be you. It does not have to be a Black woman. It doesn't have to be a person of color. It does not have to be a woman. It could be anyone that could be the spokesperson for DEI. You just have to believe in trying to make equal opportunities for everyone, equal and equitable opportunities for everyone. So everyone has the same level. Everyone has access to the same thing.
I don't know. I feel like, when I think of, inclusion, I think of when I first started in PTA and I did not feel included at all, not because of my skin color. I'm white. The other mothers were also white. It was because I wasn't a stay-at-home mother.
And that was the equity.
And that was the equity.
So yes, and I thought every other PTA meeting was at 9:00 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I can't do that, and they really were shutting a lot of people out. And it was this exclusive little club with, these, it
Right.
was a clique.
But that was, and again, that was the inequity. The inequity is making it an opportunity for all parents, not just the stay-at-home parents.
Yes.
So let's bring it back to, because Kathleen, you really hit the nail on the head with this, right? And this is exactly what Robin and a few other people have always said, it's not about race. So when you just shared now what your experience was, again, it had nothing to do with your skin color. It had to do that you were not the stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And nobody once said, you know what, Kathleen or other parents who work, how we're going to meet their needs, right? And that's why we always say you can't stay stuck with the same format of meetings. 1 month you could have it in the morning, 1 month you could have it in the evening, or you could hybrid, right?
Right.
And we're not, and like I said, we're not going to get it right. We're not going to get 100% perfect. But if you make it so that more people could attend, you're doing a hell of a job just by even having one more person that never attending your meeting be at that space.
And again, I remember what they used to do. I'm sorry, what they used to do with, we have this back to school picnic, and they would have tables blocking. You had to be a PTA member. And it was early in the, it was like the first week of school. And if you hadn't joined the PTA and you hadn't paid for this picnic, they had like tables blocking you from going in.
They were, wow.
Yes.
They were like the police.
Yes. And I remember my daughters were in aftercare because I was a working parent. I teach in New York City. And I remember they said, Mommy, are we going? And I was like sitting crying in the car. I was like, I didn't sign you up. And I remember when I became PTA president, I was like, we are never going to have any parent feel like that again.
Good for you, Kathleen. See?
And that's again, because you saw the inequity.
Yes.
You experienced that.
Yes.
And you said, I don't want that. And that's what DEI is all about.
That's right.
It's not a color thing.
Right.
It's the inequity. We want to make it so, and just what you said, you want to make it so that no one ever feels like that again. And that's good.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. They had tables blocking you.
That's horrible.
And these people would sit at the tables. They had, I remember these like red folders.
Wow.
And they had the list of who had, and there was no member hub or give backs then. Everything was on paper, and they just sat there with like the list and the, like if you weren't on the list, I just remember.
Yeah. Close you down. Oh, you can't sit here.
No, it was very upsetting.
They missed the mark.
Yep.
Because what they could have said is, this is for members, but look, this is why, would you like to be a member? We'd love to welcome you in. This is a way for us building membership. This is how we build a membership, because we might not have, they should not be blaming you. We might not have gotten our membership opportunity to you.
Right.
Here's an opportunity for you to be a member. Come join us, be part of it. They just, it was like a click.
Yeah. No,
and I'm thankful that you walked in there, especially all the work that you've done and the awards and the acknowledgement that you have done since you've become a leader in PTA. And just what you said, and that's the fight that you have. I will never allow another person to experience what I have experienced. And that's great.
And those people are now no longer involved.
Of course not.
Because it was never about the kids. It was about their kids and themselves. Yeah. So I'm going to give you a time that I realized I had some kind of privilege, right? So during the pandemic, everybody was kind of forced to stay home, right? Stay home. All those protocols were in place. And so I started to garden because I'm home. To that time, I also was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. So I'm just gardening in the back, just keeping myself happy, right? And I'm posting on Facebook, and a friend texted me and she was like, you're such a B word for doing that. And I'm like, why? Like, I'm just trying to show happiness. She's like, yeah, but there's people living in a bedroom stuck with their children because they have no backyard. They have no living space. And I thought about the many families that I've helped here and work with. And I was like, wow, I didn't think about even being a homeowner had some sense of privilege, and how selfish of me to kind of show like I'm able to do something during the pandemic when there were families that were living in a bedroom because that's all they could afford in rent. Those children were their children have no space to go outside. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it gave me such a reality check that I was like, I would never do that again because I'm fortunate. I don't want to be privileged. I'm fortunate.
Yeah, but I don't think you should. I don't know. I'm looking at it a different way. That was your sense of relief. That was not you bragging. That was not you showing, the Fendi bag and the Mercedes and your laying. You were just gardening. And the thing is, there are some people who are in one room, one bedroom, and I understand it's tight, but sometimes those families are so much more together and so much more on point than anybody else because of maybe the tightness and maybe how they have to be with each other. So it's not a thing where because I have more room, we're not on top of each other, and you should feel bad. It should really be where, what you're doing with your space. And, because I don't want you to feel bad because God blessed you with a house, because I don't think you were bragging about, oh, look at me, I'm gardening. You were just gardening because that was your sense of relief. You were just diagnosed with cancer.
I had a sense of relief. That's the point. So think about it. It was during the pandemic. People were not allowed to go outside. So I had a sense of relief when others didn't, right?
Because you were able to go outside. But the thing about it is, there's some people some families who never see each other because all they're doing is working. And because of this pandemic, a father saw a son, a father saw a daughter, a father saw a wife, all together because they never see each other because they're always working, or someone's always going to school, or someone's always going to track, or going to football, or going someplace else. Now they have a time where at least, yes, it can be cumbersome, but they're at least together. So I just say this, I'm just saying, I understand how you're feeling, but I don't want anyone ever to feel bad because of the blessing that you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, right.
I don't care, whatever.
I get that part of it. I do get that part of it, but I just did not want her to feel like, oh, I can't be, it's not like you got on a plane and your district was submerged in water, or you were dealing with a hurricane and you went off and got on a plane and said, yo, deuces to you guys in PTA land. I'm going off to Europe or something, You didn't do that,
But here's the thing. Here's the thing about that experience, right? It wasn't that, what it was, that it just made me more self-aware. So now I'm more cautious about certain things. And it wasn't because I was gardening or whatever. It was just like, as a Latina woman, I have privilege, and I'm like, wow. And it's powerful to feel that. But I'm like, I don't want it to overshadow others. And their feelings. So I just want to be more sensitive. And that's really what it taught me, just to be more sensitive and just have a different kind of lens, right? Look at things from different perspective. The person was not a nice person at all to me. So we can move on to the next question. And, Robin, I'll text you later. But, this person, she gave me a run for my money. But, but she was right. And in some ways, she was right.
I mean, I teach in a very low, socioeconomic place. So when I come home and when I'm, interacting with students in my district, it's upper middle class. So I don't expect that I'm going to maybe encounter some of the issues that that my students would have, with like low income and, things like that. And when I was helping a few years ago with the 8th grade dance, when my daughters were in 8th grade, there were students who their parents didn't speak English, didn't know about the dance. And the principal had to explain, these students weren't able to buy the tickets ahead of time. There were students that we had to the tickets were $5, but, that is a stretch sometimes for, we had also a family that had twins and they didn't get the notice for the dance. So, the principal was like, just so you know, we have, these students, would you mind? And, the PTA ended up paying for their tickets. So, it's sometimes I have to realize that there are students in my home district that are also facing, income issues and things like that. So, yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. You're right. Wow. Mm. That was good. No, I'm perfect. I think, just the way I am, I always try to, it's not a matter of not saying that it can't happen, but I just try to be sensitive to a lot of different things. So right now, I have not encountered that, like I said, me all the time. I mean, and that's initially, my why was my children, and that was my why. And then as I got in there, I saw that there were other children where I'm saying, wow, I thought, Raymond and Brielle had, they didn't have a voice. And then there were other children that were part of PTA that didn't have a parent or an advocate that was speaking for them. So I always felt that, whether I'm advocating, and I find that now I'm advocating more for those who are in special education. That's becoming, and because I don't know about it, that's not my expertise. So when someone comes, they'll say, I didn't get my hearing, and I immediately go to the resources. And, here where I live, Brenda is more so my resource. So I find that anyone who is dealing with special ed, I just immediately send them to Brenda. But I'm always advocating, well, you have to go to this meeting. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I think that the easiest thing for me to do is try to connect those families and those parents with the professionals that can help them best. So that, and that's what I'm doing now, as advocating in that aspect.
Yeah, thinking, girl.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, definitely making it in, the figuring out which people, that are involved, like the different languages, I think is, making sure that when you put out flyers or any kind of literature, the language in the population of your school.
So that's working at being more inclusive.
Right.
This is a question that I always, my answer will always be, and I don't know if it makes sense to people, but it should just come naturally to people, just to be inclusive. It should never have been a DEI thing, or checking off the boxes, right? Knowing, your whole school community. I remember when I started at PTA, even before I started the PTA, I remember sitting in the auditorium during the stated meetings, and, Sally Pinto, I never met this woman before, but she walked to me and she introduced herself. And she just said, hey, you come, I see that you come every month. And we just started talking. And, it didn't cost her anything to take a few steps to come introduce herself. She was the former, at that time, she wasn't the council president. I think she was the recording secretary. But the fact that she did that to introduce herself to a person that she has never seen before speaks volume. Because that's what really we should be doing, not always tapping into the same group of people or, because then we become the clique. But what about those that are outside that you say good morning or smile at them or how are you, or just strike a conversation. And that's how you really start being inclusive. And this is why I will always love and praise the whole PTA here, because that's what they do. That's exactly what they do. They just make it comfortable for everybody. So I again, it just has to come within you. You just got to really acknowledge people and make them feel welcome.
I think also you have to just come from a place of kindness and be empathetic, because not everyone has the same walk. Not everyone has the same needs. But if whatever that need or whatever journey they're going on, we need to be empathetic that, okay, so My husband makes six figures, and so finances might not be my issue. However, my inability to communicate effectively may. And while I have a good heart or whatever have you, so I have to concentrate on that. So it's not always, like I said, it's not always a money thing. It's not a race thing, but you got to be willing also internally to make changes within yourself, because how do we adjust to what it is? And we have to walk into, and basically any of your circles, because I agree with Brenda. It shouldn't be where, it shouldn't take a DEI to make us better humans. That should just be something that it just should just be how we are. However, in order to make it at PTAs, I think Brenda said something that was right. You can't be afraid to walk across the room and say hello, to introduce yourself to someone you don't know.
I think that, like what Robin and Brenda were saying, like, just be a decent person. Don't be an asshole.
That's right. Be a jerk.
Be willing to be friendly and accommodating,
And it's okay to make a mistake.
Right.
That's right.
It's okay to make a mistake.
You're working on it.
We're all a work in progress. It is okay to make a mistake, because God knows I make them all the time. And, but it's okay. It's, and I tell everyone all the time, count it on my heart, my head, not my heart. And if we are like that with everyone else, the way we want people to be forgiving to us, we have to be like that. But it's okay, because there's some of us that really, really, are writing things down. Oh, I have to do this. Da, da, da. And, and when we encounter those people, say, okay, let me see what you have. Okay, this is good. But if something should come off and it doesn't come off, it's okay. You're okay, because you're on the right track. And I think if we're more encouraging to people, and again, walk across the room and just be that friendly person, because PTA, we don't want people to think that PTA is a clique, because that's what they think of us. And we're not. We're so inclusive. We need so many more hands. I love where I'm at with New York State PTA. I really do, because this walk that I am in right now, I am able to meet so many wonderful leaders and just sit there and listen to them and listen to their stories about what they've encountered. What they encountered is not what I encountered, but I'm always willing to learn from somebody else. And I think that's what we have to be willing to do, is learn from each other, grow, and share the stories, share the problems. Like I said, I didn't have my bra on, but share the problems and just be honest and humorous about it's life. It happened. I didn't shake anyone's hand. I didn't hug anyone. But again, these things happen, and it's okay.
For me was not relevant, but it is relevant. Dying of Whiteness, How the Politics of Racial Resentment is Killing America's Heartland by John Metzl. It speaks about healthcare and the inequities and, racial resentment. But listening to the interviews and reading, because I did the Audible, and, reading through some of the books, I also have the book. It's just opened my eyes to the bigger problems in this country with people pushing back against DEI. And it's killing them. That's the wild part, of what I learned from this book. People are willing to die to keep others out.
That's tough. That.
Yes, the
that
book
right there.
Yep.
That's facts. That's tough.
I don't have a fancy quote like Brenda, but if I think about the PTA mission statement, that we're for all children, no matter what, that's what we're here for.
That's
I'm not here because I'm in some stay-at-home mother clique or, to make friends or to be, friends with pick out my child's teacher for next year. I'm here advocating and doing things for all the children in the unit that I serve.
That's cool.
I've only been asked twice. I didn't ask, but it is.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents that I'm in line with, I came into elementary and middle school with, those who are really in PTA and just was not trying to make a difference with their kids, or at least this is what they share with me. They just said whatever teacher they get is the teacher that they get. We have had some situations, where we heard that there were some teachers that were a little bit more onerous than others, but it's pretty much whatever teacher you got. I never got the option. I didn't get the option either. So, but I think in terms of quotes, I'm not fancy like Brenda nor Kathleen with the New York State PTA mission. So I'm going to go what just came to my head because I'm always like that. I'm a Gemini, so I just got to go what pops in there. And I'm going to quote, just keep swimming. Yep, just keep swimming. Just keep moving. Just keep moving. Just keep swimming. Again, I just going across the room and saying hello with a smile. A genuine smile.
Acknowledging those around you.
Yeah.
And not just your friends, but others that never had a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. And be intentional. Be intentional, but don't be checking off the box intentional. That's another mm-hmm. a podcast,
Right. But just I said hello. That's what I've done. Check.
I mean, I think about the time I was more flexible. We had a member hub store that closed. I was able to open it for 5 minutes for a parent to buy a ticket, and they were just so happy and, thankful. I don't know, just being flexible. I mean, I try and say hello to people across the room, but I have horrible distance vision. Some people probably think I'm so obnoxious, but I really cannot see people across the room.
Oh, that's me too.
In the grocery store.
Oh my God, that is so me. Because they'll probably sit there and say, say hello. They don't even know I don't see them.
I really can't. I cannot see people.
I'm happy to see that, Kathleen. I am the same way.
Yeah.
People be like, you didn't see me? I'm like, no. Hey, girl, how you doing?
And then there are times that I do see people, but I pretend that I don't. So, especially in the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a Sunday night and I'm trying to get lunches before I go to work the next day.